Welcome everyone to the Focus on Greatness podcast. I am your host, Hiram Roche, and I am truly excited to be able to share with you, I would say, part two of what we talked about on last time that we were together, dealing with that we as the people are created to create. We as people are created to create. So I'm very, very excited. We're going to dive right in to what we're going to talk about today. If you're coming on from the Facebook Live, please make sure that you are sharing this with your friends, with your family. We want to make sure that this gets out because I know that what I'm going to share with you tonight is going to impact you greatly. So let's dive right in. Last week, or last time that we were on, one of the things that we dealt with three different contexts, which was dealing with the tools to create, the tools of creativity, the tools to create in general. And so today, what I want to do is I want to add on to that piece about us being created to create. So the first tool that we were dealing with was inspiration. So that we are inspired to be able to do something. Coming out of the context of Genesis chapter 1, we read verses 1 and 2, and we understood by the Spirit moving over or hovering over the waters that he was doing these contexts. He was inspiring. Then he also, after he inspired, he gave imagination. In the imagination, then he went to the next piece, which I believe is very powerful to understand, is not only did he inspire, not only did he give the inspiration and then the imagination, but then he went to the next piece, which is understanding that he did all of this for a purpose, for a specific purpose for these people or for us, and who he created and why he was creating all that he did. Now, part two of what we're going to deal with tonight is I want to deal with the next verses of Scripture. Now, I'm going to read the first verse that we'll deal with, and really this is going to help us to tie along the context of conversation that we'll have on today. So today, I want to deal with doing it one day at a time. One of the things that I found out about creativity or about creating something is sometimes it's very, very difficult to be able to see something very large, to be able to see something in your imagination that has now expanded to be something very big to you, to be able to try to figure out how to make all of this happen. And sometimes what we do in the stress of trying to be creative, what we do sometimes is we try to make all things happen all at one time. But what we want to learn today is something that God is showing us of how he creates. Now, in Genesis chapter 1, we're staying in Genesis chapter 1. Let's dig right into verses 3. Hey, family, how y'all doing? I'm glad that y'all are coming on to this live. So in verses 3, we'll start there. It says, "And God said, let there be light. And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And the evening and the morning was the first day." Now, I wanted to read this because it's something very powerful, I would say, and something that we all should be able to learn from this. Now, what do you mean is something powerful in this context? Now, in verses 2, which we read last time that we were together, in verses 2, it says this, "And the earth was without form and void, and darkness filled or darkness was upon the face of the deep." Now, let's stop here. What we realize in this moment is the first thing that God did after he had inspiration, after he was dealing with his imagination, and after he understood what his purpose was for, his focus for his creation, the first thing that he did was he created light. Now, I know you're saying, now how, Hiram, how is that very powerful? Because what we realize is the first thing that God did was created or made vision. Now, what I want us to be able to understand this concept. What is vision? Now, vision is a thought. Vision is a concept. Vision is an object formed by the imagination. It's something that is created from our imagination. Now, vision comes from the imagination. So in this vision, what God did is God did the first thing is he started with his vision. Now, I love this because part one of this purpose that we see is that the first thing that God did was made light, and in him making light, he created again vision. But then the same context of conversation in this verse, it says, and he saw that it was good. Again, I'm going to say this again. It says, and he saw that it was good. He saw the light. God saw the vision that he just made, and he saw that that vision that he created was good. Now, this is where sometimes I feel that we come in this problem of complication. Is now we have our imagination, we have been inspired, we have a specific purpose of who we're creating this for, and then we start to create and write down vision for our families, vision for our businesses, vision for our churches, vision for our lives. We write all these visions down, but the question is, do we examine our vision? Do we take the time to do how God did here and examine our vision? Now, if we're not examining our vision, the reason why sometimes it does not succeed is because we did not go back to examine, did the vision go with the purpose? Did the vision go with who and what we are creating this for? And if it goes with what we created it for, then we can say, as God says, as he created here, we can all say it is good. Now we can go into actually creating, because before we need to actually start putting other things together, before we start going in from the day-to-day process of making things happen, we need to make sure that we take the time to create a vision that goes with the purpose. We need to create a vision that goes with the objective of what we're trying to do. We need to create a vision that is focused enough, that completes where we're trying to go. If we do not have that, that's why the Bible does say vision is very important, because without vision, the people will perish. But I want to add a little bit extra to that, because it's specifically understood that this is not just can you see, but your vision has to be focused. It has to be so on point of where you're trying to go, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to create. And as you have that vision, then that vision is what people can be able to stand upon. So now, since we have that floor plan, now let's go to this next piece. What we see in the remaining of this story, and I want you to take your time, I want you to be able to go back and actually read chapter 1 of Genesis. And I want you to read it in the lens of creativity. I want you to read it in the lens of a student sitting at his teacher's desk and being able to absorb what the teacher is showing you in his creative nature. I want you to make sure that you do that, because when you read this, you start to examine and see some things that I believe is very helpful to all of us, no matter what it is in our areas of life. This is very vitally important that we read and see this, because it's going to help us in this process of doing and being what God called us to do, and that is to be creative. Now, in this verse, in this chapter, the remaining of this chapter, what we see is now God creating. We see God creating different things. He's creating land. He's creating water. He's separating things. He's creating animals. He's creating trees and plants and all of these different things. And the Bible shows us that it took him 6 days to be able to create. In these 6 days, again, he created a whole lot of things, but he created them in 6 days. And then the Bible says on the seventh day, he sat back and he took a nap. No, he didn't. He sat back and rested and observed what he just created. Now, in 6 days, he created all of these things. Now, my people that's coming on Facebook Live, please make sure that you share this. But what he did in him creating these things in 6 days, he showed us something. Now, the first thing that he showed us is that it takes one day at a time. Now, this is God. This is the creator of all heaven and of earth, the one that literally spoke everything into existence. And in my mind, I say to myself, why would a God that can create anything, and he created all things, why would he need to do it in 6 days? It's because he's showing us a process. And the process that he's showing us is you need to take it one day at a time. Now, there's a story in the Bible, in the book of Genesis still, actually in the book of Genesis chapter 5, the conversation starts, but in chapter 6 is really where it builds up. And this is a story about a man named Noah. Now, this man named Noah, God came and spoke to this man and shared this dream that he wanted, or something that he wanted him to create. Now, what he was about to create, nothing like it had ever been seen. Nothing like it had ever been even known about. They didn't even know that this was even possible to make happen. But what we see is God asked Noah, I need you to build a boat. Now, I need you to build a boat because something else that has never happened before is about to happen. It's about to rain. That means water is about to come down from the sky and fall down. Now, in this time period, what they were used to is the water coming from the ground. They had never seen rain. They had never seen anything water coming down from the sky. So when Noah is now talking about this boat that God has told him to create, and he's telling them why God told him to create it, because there was about to be a massive flood that is coming. The people around Noah at this point of time did not believe in him. Now, I don't want to go there because that's a total different context of message, but I want to make sure that I throw that in, because there are going to be moments in your creativity where other people cannot see what you see. There are going to be moments in your time of creativity where people are not going to believe in what you're creating, even though you're creating it for their safety. Now, again, that's a total different context of message, and I could preach that, but I want to make sure that I pin this point in here, is where what I end up studying and seeing is that it took Noah to create this thing that had never been created before. It took Noah, some theologians say, about 50 to 75 years to create this. Now, when I thought about that, I said, first of all, man, that's a very long time. 50 to 75 years to be able to create something massive that can be able to hold animals and hold your family and hold people. You mean 50 to 75 years it took this man to be able to create it. Now, what I saw and what I thought about in my own self is it took him one day at a time. Again, it took him one day at a time to put this all together, to create this massive thing. It took him one day at a time. He could not make it in one day. He could not build this massive thing in one day. He could not make this thing happen in one day. No, it took him one day at a time. And so if it took him one day at a time to create something that was new, for us, it still takes us one day at a time. It takes you one day at a time to be able to lose weight. You can't lose 50 pounds in a day. It takes you one day at a time to master your craft. It takes you one day at a time to create something new for your relationship. It takes you one day at a time to be able to create something new for your ministry. It takes you one day at a time. You cannot create it overnight. So let's take the stress off of our shoulders in trying to make what we see in this massive imagination and our massive creative juice. Let's take the stress off of you to say that I need to make all of this happen in one day. No, take it one day at a time. And as you're taking it one day at a time, make sure that your days are focused. Make sure that every single day you have a precise thing that you're going to focus on to be able to make what you're about to create massive. Make what you're about to create strong enough that anybody can stand on your one day at a time. Now, the second thing that we see when God is creating this and taking his time to create it in 6 days is not only did he create it one day at a time, but he also created it layer upon layer. Now, what do you mean by that? Now, it took again 6 days for him to create this. And then while you're going to read this, you'll see this for yourself. It took him 6 days to create this. Now, if we take those 6 days and we divide it by 2, as any mathematical person knows, if you take these 6 days and divide it by 2, what you'll get is 3 and 3. Now, the first 3 days, God created what I would call foundational things. He created some foundational stuff. He created some water. He created some land. He created different little things that was needed created in the first level of this piece. So the first portion that God did is not only, again, that he do it one day at a time, but he did it one level at a time. He did not create the second tier or the second level until he was completed with the first. The first 3 days, he made sure that he was creating foundational things. Now, this is where the problem comes in. Sometimes not only are we doing one day at a time, and we're not doing that sometimes all the way because we're trying to rush the process. The other thing that we see is we're creating things and we're trying to create top layers before we create foundation. We don't understand that everything is a level. Now, let me prove this point. Now, I was doing some studying, and I'm going to ask y'all a question, and those that are on this Facebook Live, I want you to make sure that you comment, and I want to get what you think these answers are. Who is the first person that created the light bulb? I'm going to wait for a minute because I want y'all to really answer. Who created the first man that created the light bulb? Now, some people say, and some people, I've asked different people around me, some friends of mine, some people that I know, different random people, young, old, it didn't matter. I was just asking different people this question. And one of the common statements or the common answers that people gave was Thomas Edison. Now, they all said that Thomas Edison is the man that created the light bulb. Now, I want you to hear this. Everyone said that Thomas Edison is the man that created the light bulb. But in reality, he's not the man that created the light bulb. The man that created the light bulb, I wanted to make sure I had to scroll up so I can get his name correctly. His name is Humphrey Davy. He created the concept of the light bulb in 1802. His name is, again, Humphrey Davy. He created the concept of the light bulb in 1802. Now, what we know as the light bulb of what Thomas Edison created was the layer. He took the foundation of what was created from Humphrey and what had been created of different people in different layers. They were layering. They were taking each level of it and was going from different levels to different levels, taking layer upon layer to create what we now know and experience and enjoy as the light bulb. Now, another person that I want to be able to put out there that we might think we also know this answer because I thought I did. Who is the one that created the vehicles? The first man that created cars. Majority of people that I asked, even with that, I want y'all to answer on here. Even with that one, some people, what they said is it was Henry Ford. They say Henry Ford is the man that created the cars. He was the man that made cars what they are and all of those things. But really, when you study it out, it's not Henry Ford. The person is Karl Benz. This is where we get Benz, Mercedes-Benz from, and those popular cars that we know. Karl Benz is actually the first man that created a vehicle. But what we know is Henry Ford, because why? Henry Ford took it to the next layer, took it to the next level in the creativity. And we know him because what he did is he took the foundation from Karl Benz and added on to it, so then it became popular. Do you understand me? So what happens is sometimes we get frustrated because what we thought was the best portion of our creativity was only a part of the layer. And in those moments where we feel like, because I did not try to take this to the next, try to build upon what I had before, we think that we failed. No, you did not fail. Only thing that you did was you failed to go to the next tier. You failed to go to the next level, because understand this, in both form of this conversation, in both of these statements, and I'm going to say one more piece about this because it was something that practically that I saw even on today. In both of these pieces, we see God building one day at a time and one layer at a time. And what he took his time building, what he took his time creating, what he added every layer to create is what we stand upon today, because he did it one day at a time, one layer at a time. Now, I'm going to say this and then we'll get to almost to the wrap and the close of this on today is this. Today I was I'm coming back from a beautiful trip in Colorado Springs. When was up there at the Christian House of Prayer of Colorado Springs. And if you're in the Colorado Springs area, please go and stop by, look them up. They're a powerful, mighty church that you want to make sure that you're a part of. And so while we were coming back from Colorado, I was walking in the airport, went to go get my luggage. I know y'all have done the same thing several times. And while I'm standing there waiting for my luggage to come, I recognized something. I was looking at people getting their bags, and I was looking at upstairs. You know, when you're first coming off your flight or you're going in, you start seeing all these different things. You see people at tables with their computers plugged in and doing some work while they're waiting for their flight, or you see bookstores and you see food vendors and you see all of these different things. And what I was sitting there amazed by was that I realized that in one era of time, none of these things in here was here. At one point when they created the area of what we call an airport, only thing it was the airport. It was a building that you would walk in and go straight onto a flight and keep moving. It wasn't no place where you can stop to go eat. It wasn't a place where you can buy a book on your way. It wasn't a place where you can sit at a table and plug in a computer, because some of these things did not even exist at this moment. So what we enjoy now, what we walk in now, what we experience now in the context of an airport is layers. It was not their beginning. It's layers. And every season, every time, every moment, we see that they're improving, they are layering, they're adding on to some form of foundation. And we enjoy the benefits. Because why? They took it one day at a time and built it layer upon layer, so that you and me can now stand upon what they have built. So you, me, us, understand what God shows us in Genesis chapter 1 is something very phenomenal, something very powerful. You start with your tools, which is your inspiration, which is your imagination, which is your focus purpose. But then we have to add on to it, because now your imagination gives you a focused vision. And after you have recognized that this vision goes with your purpose, you can start creating something mighty that will last. Understand, what he envisioned, we still sit on today. It has not went away. It has not went nowhere. We're still enjoying the benefits of what he created. So if God created something that is lasting, we can create something that is lasting if we be inspired, if we have imagination, for a purpose. Let our vision be able to be focused on what we need and do it one day at a time, layer upon layer. No matter if it's your business, no matter if it's your ministry, no matter if it's your relationships, no matter if it's your schooling, no matter what it is in life, take it one day at a time and layer upon layer, so that what you create, the people you created for, can stand on it. Thank y'all so much for being on here today on Focus on Greatness podcast. Again, I am your host, Hiram Roche. And as always, it is truly an honor to be able to share with you what God is sharing with me as we continue to build together. And I want you to be creative, because that's what God created you to be able to do. Please make sure that you join me next time. I am here every first and third Monday of every month. The first and third Monday at 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, I will be here sharing what God has shared with me to be able to give to all of us, so that we can be able to walk in the fullness of what God wants us to have in our lives. So make sure that you share this. Make sure that you spread this. If you're listening to this on iTunes, on any form of platform on podcast, please make sure that you subscribe and make sure that you comment, because what I want this to do is not just be a good word that you hear, but be something that makes you think and makes you change and make you go into action. Love you all and thank you all, and see you all next time right here on Focus on Greatness podcast. Love you all. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.